Everyone, on behalf of iskcon Vaman Kshetra, we would like to welcome everyone for this evening discourse. Today, we are very fortunate to have His Grace Devakinandan Das Prabhuji joining us from Singapore. Today, Prabhuji is speaking on Over and Out, the Vidura's final counsel to Dhrtarastra. So, without any further ado, I welcome Prabhuji and request him to start today's discourse. Hare Krishna.
Hey Krishna, thank you very much, Anand Prabhu. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me, Anand Prabhu, in case there's any.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Prajajanaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Prajajanaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhav ki Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadramai ki
Jai.
Jai Ananta Kori Vaishnavrinda ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada Srila Gurudev ki
Jai.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we welcome all devotees to Vaman Kshetra's program this evening. It's evening there, it's 5 p.m. here, almost evening in Singapore. And we thought a nice topic today would be the great conversation that occurred between Vidura and his brother Dhrtarastra. It is found in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, and it's in the 13th chapter. And we'll take a particular verse, which is very nice and encapsulates all the important points that we can get from this wonderful chapter and episode. It is in the first canto, 13th chapter, 18th verse. 1, 13, 18. So if you have your devices or you have anything, you can always refer it to them. I'm going to just chant the verse first. Vidurastat abhipretya Dhritarashtram abhashata Rajan nirgamyatam shighram Pashyedam vayamagatam Vidurastat abhipretya Dhritarashtram abhashata Rajan nirgamyatam shighram Pashyedam vayamagatam Vidurastat abhipretya Dhritarashtram abhashata Rajan nirgamyatam shighram Pashyedam bhayamagatam. Viduraha, Mahatma Vidura, that, abhipretya, knowing it well, Dhritarashtram, unto Dhritarashtra, abhashata, said, Rajan, O king, nirgamyatam, please get out immediately. Shighram, without the least delay. Pashya, just see. Idam, this. Bhayam, fear. Agatam, already arrived. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. I'll repeat the translation. Mahatma Vidura knew all this, and therefore he addressed Dhrtarastra, saying, "My dear king, please get out of here immediately. Do not delay. Just see how fear has overtaken you." Let me repeat that. Mahatma Vidura knew all this, and therefore he addressed Dhrtarastra, saying, "My dear king, please get out of here immediately. Do not delay. Just see how fear has overtaken you." Let us hear Srila Prabhupada's purport. Cruel death cares for none, be he Dhritarashtra or even Maharaj Yudhishthir. Therefore, spiritual instruction, as was given to old Dhritarashtra, was equally applicable to younger Maharaj Yudhishthira. As a matter of fact, everyone in the palace, including the king and his brothers and mother, was raptly attending the lectures. But it was known to Vidura that his instructions were especially meant for Dhritarashtra, who was too materialistic. The word Rajan is especially addressed to Dhritarashtra significantly. Dhritarashtra was the eldest son of his father, and therefore, according to law, he was to be installed on the throne of Hastinapur. But because he was blind from birth, he was disqualified from his rightful claim. But he could not forget the bereavement, and his disappointment was somewhat compensated after the death of Pandu, his younger brother. His younger brother left behind him some minor children, and Dhritarashtra became the natural guardian of them. But at heart, he wanted to become the factual king and hand the kingdom over to his own sons, headed by Duryodhana. With all these imperial ambitions, Dhritarashtra wanted to become a king, and he contrived all sorts of intrigues in consultation with his brother-in-law, Shakuni. But everything failed by the will of the Lord, and at the last stage, even after losing everything, men and money, he wanted to remain as king, being the eldest uncle of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Maharaj Yudhishthira, as a matter of duty, maintained Dhritarashtra in royal honor, and Dhritarashtra was happily passing away his numbered days in the illusion of being a king or the royal uncle of King Yudhishthira. Vidura, as a saint and as the duty-bound, affectionate youngest brother of Dhritarashtra, wanted to awaken Dhritarashtra from his slumber of disease and old age. Vidura therefore sarcastically addressed Dhritarashtra as the king, which he was actually not. Everyone is the servant of eternal time, and therefore no one can be king in this material world. King means the person who can order. The celebrated English king wanted to order time and tide, but the time and tide refused to obey his order. Therefore, one is a false king in the material world, and Dhritarashtra was particularly reminded of this false position and of the factual, fearful happenings which had already approached him at that time. Vidura asked him to get out immediately if he wanted to be saved from the fearful situation which was approaching him very fast. He did not ask Maharaj Yudhishthira in that way because he knew that a king like Maharaj Yudhishthira is aware of all the fearful situations of this flimsy world and would take care of himself in due course, even though Vidura might not be present at that time. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So this is a very, very important verse for us to absorb and remember, because This entire episode, this conversation that happens between Vidura and Dhrtarastra is a conversation that we should all have. And it's a conversation that we could all hear. There are basically two persons involved in this beautiful pastime. And in this pastime, the two persons are Vidura, who is a great devotee of the Lord, and who is actually Yamaraj, who during the time when Krishna was present in this world, decided to take off from his duties, in Yamaloka, which can be very tiring if you're dealing with all these kinds of souls who are punishing, who have to be punished. He wanted to take time off. And so he got a leave of absence and he came over to this world as one of the great associates and Mahajans. And he took this wonderful form of Vidura. So Vidura is a very exalted devotee of Krishna. And somehow or another, by Krishna's arrangement, he became the half-brother to Dhrtarastra. So Dhrtarashtra was eldest, Pandu was second, and then Vidura was actually the third. But Vidura was always considered to be never an ascendant to the throne. Because Dhrtarashtra, as stated in the purport, was blind at birth, in one sense, according to the succession rules and laws at that time, he was considered to be disqualified to be a king. And so automatically that right to be a king, according to the laws of succession, went over to Pandu. And of course, when Pandu perished and the Pandavas were left homeless, then as Prabhupada writes in the purport, somehow or another, Dhrtarashtra became king. So Prabhupada makes special mention of this point here, that actually Vidura, or rather Dhrtarashtra, he felt actually very disappointed in life. For one thing, he was born blind. And so even though, like everyone, it is very natural that we want fame, name, and position, when we don't understand the true purpose of life, that is what we think is the true purpose of life. So when Dhrtarashtra was young, he already had a strong materialistic tendency in him. And he became disappointed that he could not become the ruler of the kingdom, though he felt that he had the right to be. But according to the laws of succession, Pandu became, and Dhrtarashtra had to live many years under the shadow of his younger brother. And then after that, when Pandu somehow left this world, again by the arrangement of Krishna, Dhrtarashtra suddenly found that he had hope, that all his personal and unrealized ambitions could come to fruit. Why? Because he was now suddenly throned as king. Vidura was considered to be the son of a maidservant. His mother was considered not to be of royalty. So his stake in the kingdom would never be a source of danger or threat to Dhrtarashtra. So even though Dhrtarashtra was very powerful, and Bhagavatam and Mahabharata tells us that Dhrtarashtra was actually very power hungry, he had a little bit of a soft spot for his brother Vidura, because Vidura's nature was that of a devotee. And the beauty of a devotee's nature is that even ruffians and saints, they both love devotees. That is how the Goswamis of Vrindavan are glorified. Prabhupada quotes, very often in lectures, and if you read the Goswami Sat Ashtakam, you find that the Sat Goswamis were loved not only by saintly persons, even ruffians actually enjoyed being in their company. When you saw Jagai and Madai in Chaitanya Charitamrita, even though they were so full of hatred and their hearts were so black with sin, somehow in their drunken stupor, they were dancing to the chanting of the holy names. So somehow or another, devotional service is Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. It is actually found in the heart. It is declared by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is declared by Shastras, that bhakti for the Lord is actually in our hearts. So when we come across a saintly personality like Vidura, even though Dhrtarashtra was always filled with so much materialistic tendencies, as stated in Bhagavatam, still he had a little bit of soft spot for his brother. He also had a soft spot for Vidura because in his heart of hearts, he knew actually that Vidura would never stake a claim to the throne. And that is why, he could renounce his envy of Vidura. It's a very interesting point because today's discussion is actually on the art of renunciation. And in this one verse, we can learn so many things about the nature of renunciation and how when we don't renounce something, that thing has a habit of catching us actually. So we wanted to give you a bit of a background. You understand from the purport how Dhritarashtra first felt disappointed, and then when he became king and his his 100 Kaurava sons were there, he thought that the kingdom was his surely. And like every father thinks and every mother would think that their children are the rightful heirs, he did not consider the Pandavas who came back to be his children. He actually discriminated between them. Even though they were all from the Kuru dynasty, even though he should have been a compassionate surrogate father to them because Pandu had left the world, he did not do so. In fact, even though externally Dhritarashtra appeared to be quite soft and always blind and looking like he was disabled, he was actually very, very cunning. And that is why Prabhupada writes here, he always contrived on all sorts of intrigues in the court to always give his children the start or the edge over the Pandavas. And so in time, whatever sadhu sangha that he was going to get from Vidura faded away, because Dhritarashtra's sangha was actually with passion for materialistic nature. So it's very important for us to know that whatever that we take association of, especially in our mind, that becomes what will control how we behave. It's a very important point. If our mind is full of envy and criticism, then actually we are taking association of envy and criticism. It is not sadhu sangha, it is asat sangha. But if our mind is full of bhagavatam, and if it is full of sastras and full of the instructions of the Lord, then the sadhu sangha happens in the mind, because then we are always trying to remember the instructions of the Lord. We're always trying to take association and remember the instructions of saintly persons. And when that happens, the tendency to renounce these materialistic tendencies would become very natural. So Vidura was very powerful as a devotee, but his power lay in his humility. And even though Dhritarashtra, tried so hard, Bhagavatam tells us to plot here and plot there and find ways to make sure the Pandavas would never get the kingdom, you will note that Prabhupada wrote in the purport that at the end of the day, Krishna's will and his plan was very different from what Dhritarashtra wanted. Because Dhritarashtra's plan was not aligned with Krishna's plan, he became Dushtita Matihi. In Bhagavatam, Narada Muni tells Vyas Bhagavan that anyone at any point of time, if you were to describe an activity, if you were to describe a pastime, if you were to perform anything which is not aligned with Krishna, then what happens is it actually agitates the mind. Dushtita Matihi, like a pendulum, the mind will keep moving from this point to that point. And always the mind will be moving between dualities. So that is why in Mahabharata you find one moment Dhritarashtra wants to be loving to Pandavas. Then he will chide his children. And then he appeared to be a bit loving. And the next moment, he's intriguing behind. And he's finding some way with Shakuni to find a way in which he knows what his sons are doing, but he's turning a blind eye to them literally. Not just because he was blind, but actually in the true sense of the phrase, he turned the blind eye. Even in material laws of today, if you don't fire a gun at someone, but if you aided them or gun and you said you should, you are actually complicit and implicit in the crime. And sometimes if you see someone, if someone is very angry and you put the gun on the table and say, maybe this could be a solution, I'm not sure, and you walk away, there are cases that will tell you that you have also abetted the person. How? By being silent. So Dhritarashtra's style was like that. He was politician par excellence. All today's politicians that you see everywhere, they must have taken some manual from him, because he was never in the forefront. And he always used his disability as a source of sympathy. But actually, he was always full of materialistic desires. He desired property. He desired to hold on to everything he could. And this is the danger. And this is one thing that we have to learn from actually Dhritarashtra. But Vidura was a complete opposite. So now we understand the flavor of Dhritarashtra. Let us understand the flavor of Vidura. Vidura's nature is very different. Even though he was born as a son of a maidservant, his mood was he was always devotional. Why? Because he was actually Yamaraj. And not only was he Yamaraj, but as Yamaraj, Vidura was actually a devotee of the Lord. So from day one, Bhagavatam tells us, the day when Arjuna and the Pandavas came back to Hastinapur, after being in the forest when Pandu had left, from that day, Vidura just surrendered to serving them because he recognized the devotional service of the Pandavas. But because he was always speaking up for the Pandavas and speaking up for righteousness and dharma and behaving like a devotee, Vidura had so much trouble. And the trouble came from Duryodhan, Dushashan, and even though they insulted him like anything, Dhrtarastra never did anything actually. So this is a very important point. In the third canto, first chapter, I think from the verses 11, 12, 13, 14, it is very important for us to understand Vidura's consciousness as he walks back to this palace in this verse today. You must remember, Vidura was coming back after the Mahabharat war. And in this verse, Maharaj Dhrtarastra was sitting down thinking he was Rajan, king, but actually he was no longer king. His entire empire had been decimated. And actually Yudhishthira Maharaj had won the battle. He was king. So actually Vidura had left this entire Mahabharat war. He never took part in it. Why didn't he take part in it is very important. Because Vidura, at the height of all the terrible ill intentions and the plotting of the Kauravas with Dhritarashtra, Vidura was invited by Dhritarashtra for consultation. After they were discussing, about how the Kauravas were speaking so ill of Pandavas, they were plotting. Then Dhritarashtra called in 3.1.10 of Srimad Bhagavatam. He called Vidura. Tell me now, what are your instructions? What is your advice? Tell me what you think. And this is what Vidura told Dhritarashtra at that time before the war started. He said, you must now return whatever share which is legitimate to the Pandavas. You must return it to Yudhishthira because Yudhishthira Maharaj has no enemies. And if you do not do that, you will have untold sufferings due to your offenses. So please, you should be afraid of making the wrong decision. And please make the right decision. Then he warned Dhritarashtra, his brother. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He has accepted the Pandavas as his kinsmen. In other words, the whole world are already now with Krishna. He is present right now in the home of all his family members, and he is their worshipable Lord. In other words, he was saying that if Krishna is on the side of the Pandavas, you stand no chance. This is very important. Now Vidura told Dhritarashtra very straightforwardly. This is mood of a devotee. Devotee doesn't turn here and there. He speaks it, but he speaks it with love, with no ill intention and no malice. So then he told him very nicely, my dear brother, you are maintaining offense personified in the form of Duryodhan. In other words, he's saying that Duryodhan is like offense personified. He's like a walking offense. And you are actually maintaining him. He is the one who is envious of Krishna. If you maintain a non-devotee of Krishna, if you don't do anything to stop him, my dear brother, you will be devoid of all auspicious qualities. Please relieve yourself of this ill fortune as soon as possible and do it for the good of our whole family. Such an important point. And when he said this, Duryodhan was present, and Duryodhan, Bhagavatam tells us, became so angry that his lips and his eyes became reddish with anger. His lips were trembling. Sometimes when you get angry with someone, your lips are trembling because you want to say something very quickly. He was there in the company of Karna, in the company of his uncle Sakuni. So you can imagine what kind of sadhu sangha he was getting. Not sadhu sangha at all. And at that point of time, Duryodhan then insulted Vidura. He said openly to everyone, who has asked him to come here? This man is a son of a kept mistress. He is so crooked that he spies in the interest of our enemy, on whose support he has actually against those on whose support he has grown up with. In other words, Duryodhan was telling Vidura, we are feeding you, but like a snake, you are going to the other side. And who are you? You are just a son of a kept mistress. Then he told all his throw him out of the palace immediately. And you should leave him with nothing but only his breath. Only his breath. Nothing else he should have. That was how insulting Duryodhan was. Now, when Duryodhan spoke such painful words, anyone in that position, would actually feel very aggrieved. They should. Because here was Vidura trying his very best to be a well-wisher of his brother and all his nephews. But instead of hearing him, they criticized him, they condemned him, they found fault in him, and they dishonored him. And these are all terrible things to do to a Vaishnava. So Vidura's consciousness at that point of time is very important for today's conversation. Instead of becoming upset, instead of becoming angry, Bhagavatam tells us in 3.1.16 that Vidura actually did not become either. And his mood is the genuine mood for renunciation that Srila Prabhupada is speaking in Bhagavatam. Swayam danu dwari nidhaya mayam brator puro marma sutaditopi sa ittamalyul banakarna banair gata vyatoyat urmanayanaha. It's a very beautiful verse from 3.1.16. And the translation is very nice. Vidura was pierced by the arrows. What were these arrows? The sharp words of Duryodhan. He was pierced by them. And these arrows went through his ears, Karna banai, like arrows. They went through his ears. And when they went into his ears, they afflicted the core of his heart. Marmasu means the core of the heart. Heart is already the core. But these words, they afflicted him. They hurt him. They hurt him very much. But what did he do? Immediately, without hesitation, Vidura put his bow at the doorstep and he just walked out of his brother's palace. He just walked out. It's so nice. But when he walked out, what's really important is this. Sometimes we can walk out of something very angry and we say, I've renounced this, I walk away. But after walking away, we are carrying the same thing with us all the way, isn't it? And then we come home and we say, no, I've given that up. But whole night we cannot sleep. Next day we are thinking about it. So actually we haven't renounced anything. We haven't left the bow at the door. Just for drama, we put that bow. But when we leave, actually we are taking that whole thing with us. But Vidura was not like that. When he put the bow down, he put it down because he was afflicted through the ear into the core of his heart by the painful words of his nephew Duryodhan. But Bhagavatam tells us, Gatavyataha. Gatavyataha means he did that without being sorry for himself. Very important. He was not sorry for the situation. Generally speaking, when we are very attached to something, and when someone hurts us, or someone takes it away from us, or someone, criticizes us, very often we attach most to our pride, isn't it? And our false ego. And when someone hurts us by saying certain words, we become insulted. And when we become insulted, we feel sorry for ourselves. We pat our back and say, it's okay. You're a nice person. That person doesn't know who you are. Like this, we feel sorry for ourselves. But self-sympathy is not the mark of a Vaishnava. Because a Vaishnava sees the hand of Krishna, even in all these difficulties. So for Vidura, he was not sorry for the situation because he saw that this entire situation in front of him that was unfolding was actually the external energy of the Supreme. In other words, he saw Krishna's hand in it. That is very important. He saw Krishna's hand in it. And because he saw Krishna's hand in it, he decided, this is very nice. This is how Krishna has decided, enough. You've done enough. Now put the bow there, walk away. And you know what Vidura did? He went on nice yatra. He went on tirthas. He went all over, all the pilgrimage places. He studied with the great sage Maitreya. He heard Bhagavatam. While all of them were fighting Mahabharat war and Duryodhan was being killed, he was hearing Bhagavatam. Isn't that the mercy of Krishna? And after everything, he remembered then, he heard about the war. He heard about what happened to Duryodhan. He heard about his brother Dhritarashtra. That day in the third canto, Dhritarashtra set him up actually. He called him in for consultation, but he knew what his sons would say. He knew what Sakuni would want. He knew what Karna would want. But this is how not only was Dhritarashtra blind, but he was blind spiritually also. He lacked compassion because he was holding on too tightly to his properties, his assets, and his kingdom. And that's the meaning of the word Dhritarashtra. Dhrita means to hold very tightly. And Dhritarashtra, Ashtra means to hold on to property and land and assets. So Dhritarashtra is one who holds very tightly to all those things which are actually impermanent, but which he falsely thinks is actually permanent. And this was the foolishness of Dhritarashtra. So you see the two brothers, they were born into the same scenario, but because one was with devotional service, even though he was insulted, even though it was painful for him, he was able to rise above that pain. We will always be hurt by words, Prabhus, Matajis, always. Someone will say something to hurt us. We have two ways to react. We could either take it very personally, which means that we are angry, or we could take it in the sense that it is painful. It is painful, but I'm not sorry it has happened because there is a reason for this. And instead of condemning again and counteracting Duryodhan, what did Vidura do? He just put down his bow and he just walked away. He just walked away because he was wasting his time. What's the point? He was wasting his time, just like Parikshit Maharaj decided, na asyattat pratikurvanti. Why should I now counter curse Shringi Brahmana? No point. I only have 7 days. I have 7 days, that's all. Vidura did not even have 7 days. He didn't know when he will die. So he thought, better I put the bow down and quickly walk out and remember Krishna, because death can come anytime, anytime. So with all Duryodhan speaking, at the end of the day, you know what the irony is? Because Vidura renounced the palace and did not even look back at it, and he renounced it in a genuine manner, knowing and seeing the hand of Krishna. And because he used that time to plunge into devotional service, never wishing Dhritarashtra ill, never wishing Duryodhan ill, very important. That is actually renunciation. Renunciation is not grudgingly, okay, fine, I give up, but I hate you. Or grudgingly, I give up, but one day I'm going to come back. No, Vidura didn't think I'm going to come back to this palace. No. But because he didn't want it, Krishna gave it to him. How? In this first chapter, first canto, 13th chapter. In this chapter, after Vidura heard the news that the entire Kaurava army was decimated and only his brother was left alone, old and decrepit, and yet holding on to a throne which was no longer his, Vidura decided, let me come back. Let me come back. It's a very important point. That's why he came back. That's why in Bhagavatam it is stated nicely that Vidura left the palace. Duryodhana thought when Vidura left the palace that Duryodhana would never leave the palace. Duryodhana was certain of victory. That's why he did not renounce anything, because he thought the palace belonged to him. But in the end, Duryodhana's thighs would be smashed. My Guru Maharaj said even if he was alive, he would never be able to walk back to the palace, because Bhima smashed his thighs beyond repair. Beyond repair. He would only be able to crawl back to the palace. And yet Vidura came back intact, peaceful, back to the same palace from where he was thrown out. And where was Duryodhana? Where was Dusashan? Where was Karna? Where was Shakuni? All of them who wanted him out, they were forced to renounce. And he who renounced genuinely, he could come back very easily. This is the effect and this is the art of renunciation. And that's why Vidura came back very, very peacefully. Did he come back to enjoy the riches? Did he come back to strike a deal with the Pandavas? Now that you all are king, remember I helped you in the house of lag. Remember I'm always with you. Could you give me some shelter in Hastinapur? No. Bhagavatam tells us in 1:13-14, just a bit further down in the verses, very nicely it is stated, Kanchit kalam athavat seed, sarkrito deva satsukham, bhratur jeshtasya shreyaskrit, sarvesam sukham avahan. The important words are in the third line. Bhratur. Bhratur means brother. Jeshtasya. Jeshtasya means elder brother. So Bhratu Jeshtasya means the elder brother, Dhrtarastra. So now we are understanding why Vidura came back. Vidura came back Shreyas Krit. Shreyas Krit means for doing good to his elder brother. That's the word-to-word meaning. So actually, Vidura came back to serve Dhrtarashtra. Why could he serve Dhrtarashtra? Because he was renounced. One who is genuinely renounced, he has capacity to serve. Because his mentality is not that he wants to be served. So he came back to serve his brother. And if you read the word-to-word translation, Prabhupada very nicely says, thus Maharaj Vidura, when he came back, he was treated like a godly person by the Pandavas. Imagine, he was called the son of a kept mistress when he left. When he came back, he was treated as a godly person by the Pandavas. But why did he come? He came back and he remained there for a certain time. He remained in the palace for a certain time just to rectify the mentality of his eldest brother. And in this way, to bring happiness. To happiness not only to Dhritarashtra, but happiness to all others. This is such an important point in 1:13-14. When we are genuinely renounced of pride, expectations, when we are renounced of this need for us to be glorified, when we are renounced of possessing something because of power, when we have even a morsel of what Vidura had, then what will happen is such a devotee has the mood of always trying to bring good to others. This is mood of a Vaishnava. Vaishnava always tries to bring good for others. Vidura did not come back to tell Dhritarashtra, I told you so. No, he didn't do that. He came back to put his hands together and to change his mentality. This is another thing about a devotee. Because a devotee is genuinely renounced of expectations, the devotee only desires to bring good to humanity. He has no other purpose, and that's why Vidura came. He came back to tell his brother the value of human life. That's for which he came. And because he came, Dhritarashtra could sit down and listen to him. Otherwise, Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Pandavas were so humble that they always saw Dhritarashtra as much senior to them. They felt they did not have the adhikar to preach to Dhritarashtra. But Vidura had it. He was like an affectionate younger brother. So that's why he came back. So even though Vidura renounced the palace, he came back this time, not on account of attachment, but on account of being attached to somehow or another rectifying the materialistic mentality of his elder brother. This is very important. So devotees don't artificially renounce anything. If they find they have an opportunity to speak about Krishna, even if it is from the place they were thrown out, they will go back. They'll go back. There was no ego issues. Otherwise, what I may have done is, if someone came and told me, come and talk to your brother Dhritarashtra, I would have said, you tell him to call me first. If he gives me invitation, I will come back. Otherwise, I'm not coming back. Vidura did not need an invitation. This is genuine renunciation. And it's so nice. He came back only for that. And the other point that's really important is, after you have heard the background that I described to you in the 3rd canto, 1st chapter, of how he was insulted despite giving good advice, and how he walked out, we must remember that renunciation is not just a concept, but renunciation is best when someone practices it. The reason that Vidura had so much potency to finally persuade Dhritarashtra to leave his false kingdom, was because he himself had renounced previously. He himself had renounced genuinely. When you have tasted something and you have experienced it, then you can transmit that experience to someone. Is it not true? But if you know something theoretically, you will only speak about it from technicalities. But one who has experienced the truth, it is known in Bhagavatam as Swa Anubhava, right? That is the greatness of Shukadev Goswami. Yes, Swanubhavam Akila Srutisaramekam. See, Sukadev Goswami is adored and worshipped because not only did he speak Bhagavatam, but he experienced it and therefore he practiced it. So Vidura practiced it. He had Swa Anubhava because he left the palace on his own. He genuinely renounced that life and he went on yatra and he was happy. He was not sorry. This is known in Bhagavatam as Tattva Darshinaha. You remember Bhagavad Gita 4:34, the famous verse about the qualification of how to approach the spiritual master? The last two words are very important. What is that word? Tattva Darshinaha. In other words, one who has experienced truth, one who has seen truth, they can transmit it to you. It's very important. You know, there was a boy in a village and he was very addicted to sweets. You know how our iskcon sweets are, right? They're so addictive. Even if you've never had, any taste for sweets, once you start taking iskcon sweets, you don't stop. So the mother was very worried about her son. He was so addicted to sweets. So one day she brought him to this wise man, at the edge of the village and told the man, "My dear sir, please cure my son of his addiction to sweets." And the man said, "I will, but I need 2 weeks." 2 weeks later, she comes back and the boy has given up addiction to sweets. And she thanked him very much. And she asked him, "Why you took 2 weeks? Were you busy? Did you have some appointment?" And the man said, "No. When you told me to cure his addiction, I realized the only way I could serve him was that I should cure my addiction to sweets. So I took 2 weeks. And after I've cured it, now I can transmit that experience to him." And Vidura was not just a speaker. He was not just a philosopher. He actually renounced. So that's why he came back. The potency of bhakti and the potency of renunciation is only experienced when we practice it, not just when we speak it. This is very important. That's why if you look at the verse, it starts by saying, Maharaj Vidura knew all this. What did he know? He knew that time was coming. He knew evam graheshu saktanam pramattanam tat ihaya atyakramat avinyataha kalaha paramadushtaraha. The verse before. He knew that time was coming for his brother. And he knew this time was coming so quickly and so suddenly and so imperceptibly that no one can actually destroy it and no one would avoid it. And that is why he knew Dhrtarastra would face death very soon. And when death comes, Prabhus and Matajis, as you know, very often it comes without warning. There's no signal, that the car is overtaking you. Imagine a car in the dark night with no headlights, no signal, and all of a sudden you hear it overtaking you. That is Yamaraj. He comes without signal. My Guru Maharaj used to say, he comes without signal. He comes without headlights. And before you know it, he's standing in front of you. And this happens very often, Bhagavatam tells us, when we are in the mood of evam graheshu saktanam, pramattanam tad ihaya. The more we are attached to thoughts the more we are overly attached. In fact, the word is pramattanam. Pramattanam means insanely attached. If we are so attached to materialistic things, thinking that they belong to us and we belong to them, sometimes the problem with devotees, the challenge we face is we have given up gross aspects in our lives. We gave up meat, fish, eggs. We gave up, a very lavish lifestyle. Maybe we can afford 3 cars. We say only 1 car is enough. Maybe, we have so much money, but we use it for Krishna's service. Maybe we have money to buy elaborate clothes, but we are happy wearing simple clothes. So you see, so much of this we have renounced. But sometimes it is the subtler things that we cannot renounce. The subtler things can be I'm attached to my pride. I may be attached to this vision of who I am. I may be attached to my greed. Maybe I don't want to eat so much, but I want name and fame. Maybe I'm attached to my position. Oh, this service only belongs to me, Prabhu. If anybody else takes this service, right, I will not let it go. And that's how Kurukshetra happens all the time, isn't it? Luckily, you have Vamankshetra. But Kurukshetra is also possible if we are not careful. So these are all subtle things. But as devotees, these are the challenges we are facing. We've given up the cars, the houses, and all this generally, but we've not given up this. So Vidura's advice to his brother is as true to him as it is true to us. Because while we may say, hey, I don't have a palace, I'm not sitting on a throne, but what does it mean to Dhrtarastra? His position meant everything. That's why, like a dog, he was still sitting there. He did not have a position, but he wanted the throne. He wanted to die thinking, I'm king. But Prabhupada writes, only king is Krishna. A king means he must be able to move everything. And whatever he orders happens. The only person in this entire three worlds and beyond who orders something and it happens is Krishna. No one else can order something and it happens. It's up to Krishna. So Dhritarashtra was sarcastically called Rajan. Vidura wanted to awaken that in him. He knew his brother was sharp enough. So he used the word Rajan, king. But Dhritarashtra knew, hey, wait a minute, I'm not king, Why is he calling me king? Because he wanted to awaken in him, you still have your pride. You still have your false ego. You still are greedy. And you are still proud of who you are. You are attached to your position. You are attached to your name. You are attached to your assets. You are attached to your acquisitions. You are still very much Dhritarashtra. Come out of it. Why? Because as he says here, death, please get out of here immediately. Death is approaching. And the cousin of death, Prabhu's and Mataji's, is time. Time and death are cousins. When time comes, the end result of time very often, right? The end result of time will always be death. He is one cousin who always appears. Death will always appear. And therefore it was coming for Dhritarashtra. But because he was so caught up every day with the false idea, I'm king, throne, it was up to Vidura to make him understand the urgency. And this is the challenge we have in our life. No matter how much we amass in our life, Bhagavatam tells us we still have this tendency to think all that we have will be all that we will carry. But it is not true. Prabhupada states here that Vidura's instructions are not just applicable to non-devotees, they're also applicable to devotees. Why? Look at the first line of the purport. Prabhupada declares, death is cruel. Cruel means it cares for no one. You cannot put on tilak and say, hey, don't touch me. You're going to die also. It's just in what consciousness you die that is the key. And that's why Vidura, as an affectionate brother, came back. Because he wanted him to renounce his materialistic consciousness and become attached to devotional consciousness. So actually, if you read the purport, we come to understand that the nature of death is very cruel. And no matter where you go in this world, death will catch us. You remember there was a famous story, where there was this bird on a tree. And one day it looked down and saw Yamaraj smiling at it. And when Yamaraj smiles at you, it's not a good smile. Huh? Everybody else smiles at you, is fine. If Yamaraj smiles at you because you are Dhruva Maharaj going back, that's a different story. But you're not. And the bird was not. So when he saw Yamaraj, it became very scared, So then immediately it started praying very hard. And Garuda came because they are cousins. And Garuda said, how can I help you? And bird said, see, Yamaraj is there, just looking at me. And he's got this sinister smile on him, So Garuda said, don't worry. I fly so fast, my dear cousin. I'll bring you so far, Yamaraj can't catch you. So he flew across the 7 continents of this world and put him on an island so remote, on just one tree on a branch. And the moment the bird got on that branch, it died. And Garuda was shocked. I brought him all the way here and he died. And when Garuda turned, he saw Yamaraj with that same sinister smile. And Garuda said, I'm confused. I took him far away from you. How did you get here so fast? Yamaraj said, I'm also confused. Because according to my book here, in the morning, this bird was supposed to die 7 continents away in just half an hour, 1 hour's time. And I was thinking, how is that going to happen? I think, Chitragupta got this one wrong. But instead, Garuda, you came and you carried him all the way there. And now I realize that this is the purpose of what I do. I'm also amazed that when death comes, no one can avoid it. So we should understand soberly, even as devotees. We should not have the false assumption that these teachings are meant for the Dhrtarastra or the Pandavas. We should list down all the things today. After class, you list down in a piece of paper all the things that we are still attached to. And hopefully the list will not be long. Good attachment means you're attached to Krishna. That's fine. And you may say, I'm very attached to my service. But my question then, if you're very attached to your service, are you ready to share your service with someone? No, I'm not. Then you have to write it down. Are you ready to share Krishna consciousness with someone? Are you ready to share a position with someone? Are you ready to share something without pride? These are all questions we have to ask ourselves. And that's why in Bhagavatam, in this purport, you find that while Vidura was speaking to Dhrtarastra, he spent a few days and he gave him lectures. Prabhupada says these were lectures. So you can imagine it was like a discourse, that Vidura was giving. And as he was speaking, all the other members of the family, the Pandavas and Kunti Mata, they also sat down. And how did they hear? Prabhupada uses 2 words. They heard with rapt attention. Rapt attention. Rapt attention means nothing else moving. They just heard. This is the formula to come out of fear. Why do I use the word fear? Because look at the verse today. Look at the last line. Pashyedam bhayam agatam. Pashyedam means, pashya, just see. Idam means this. Just see this frightful situation. And this frightful situation is what? It is bhayam. It is causing you fear. So the question can be asked that why is it that Vidura came? He came to make sure that his brother would become God conscious, that he would give up attachment to material things. But he also came because he realized that Dhrtarastra had fear in his heart. Whenever as old age comes, fear will overtake us. You ask any elderly persons, as they grow old, they will become more fearful in life. Have you noticed how when we become older, when our parents become older, they actually become very vulnerable. They sometimes behave like children, And when we don't go and help them in some things, they look lost. Yet 20 years ago, you remember them being so strong that when you were lost, you turned to them. Why? Because Bhagavatam says, Pashyedam bhayam agatam. This fear of death and deterioration has already arrived. It has come into the hearts. It is suggested by Paramatma. And that's why we become fearful of death as time passes. And Dhrtarashtra was fearful. That's why he was holding on to his seat. That's why he was sitting there. He didn't want to move. Instead of walking away from it, which would mean he's not fearful, he was holding on to it because he was fearful. And that's another important point. In the 3rd canto, 29th chapter, 26th verse, when you have time, please look at this verse. Kapila Dev defines for us what causes fear in our hearts. By the way, some people say, I'm not fearful, but fear has a cousin also. The cousin of fear is anxiety. Even if you're not fearful, I guarantee you in life that we are anxious. Even now, I'm anxious because now it's 5:55 p.m. and I've only 5 minutes left. So I'm a bit anxious also. So if fear doesn't come, anxiety will come. It will come. But Kapila Dev says so nicely, Atmanascha parasyapi, yaha karoti anta udaram, tasya binna drisho mrityuhu, vidade bhayam ulbanam. Ulbanam means great, great, great. Ulbanam, great fear. And another important word is binna drisho. Binna drisho means differentiation, yours and mine. In other words, it means duality. And the translation is very nice. Kapila Dev says, as the blazing fire of death, O mother, I cause great fear in whoever makes the least discrimination between himself and other living entities. Why? because of a differential outlook. And Prabhupada explains this very nicely. Dhritarashtra always thought of his kingdom as mine. He thought of the Pandavas as separate. He never saw that everyone is actually part and parcel of Krishna. And this is how we live in this world. Whenever we have duality, Ichcha Dvesha, whenever we have duality, whenever we see someone as being separate, that means whatever that is separate from me, I want. Because I want to acquire. So whenever Dhritarashtra saw something that wasn't in his hands, whenever Duryodhana saw something that wasn't in his hands, they wanted it. They did not see it as belonging to Krishna. If we see something as belonging to Krishna, there's no need to accept or reject. Instead of accepting or rejecting, what do? We serve. Instead of hating or liking, what do? We serve. Instead of saying this is darkness and that is light, what do? We serve. So for a devotee, duality doesn't touch us when we genuinely renounce. So there's a deep connection between discrimination, duality, attachment, and renunciation. Very important point we should remember. And that is why Vidura concluded his time in this verse before he starts speaking. He says very nicely that, my dear brother, as Prabhupada writes in the purport, Dhritarashtra had lost everything. He lost money, he lost men, but he still harbored a desire to be the king. And this is misuse of intelligence. In Bhagavatam, it is said, that when we are materialistic in nature, our intelligence runs after that which cannot be obtained. That is misuse of intelligence. When we do not learn to renounce things, how? By using it in Krishna's service. When we don't learn to renounce things by using them in Krishna's service, instead we use them in our service. When we keep something because it serves our senses, but it doesn't serve the devotees and it doesn't serve Krishna, that should be renounced. Because otherwise, this intelligence, it will become so misused because of the mind and the senses that we will run after everything that we should not run. We will do that. Nunam pramattam kurute vikarma. In 554 of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's very nicely stated by Rishabdev that the living entity engages in sinful activities because his aim is sense gratification. So when we cannot renounce sense gratification, it's very difficult for us to become attached to Krishna. No doubt it is a learning curve and a journey, but Prabhus, Matajis, we have to start somewhere and we have to help each other. And that's why these messages from Bhagavatam, they are meant to hit us very hard. I remember my Guru Maharaj saying one thing very nice. He said this point, that which is not there, we feel as if it is there and we hold on to it. I repeat, that which is not there, we feel as if it is there and we hold on to it. Then Maharaj defined Maya. Maya is like a powerful brahmachari. Maya is like a powerful brahmachari sun who's drinking water in a mirage. Something wrong with that statement, isn't it? There can be no water in a mirage, nor can a brahmachari have a sun. The things which are impossible, we still think it is possible. That is illusion. That was Dhritarashtra's condition. He really thought till the end of his life, I'm still king, I'm still king. But he was fortunate to have Yudhishthir Maharaj. Because Yudhishthir Maharaj was so kind. He maintained him in royal honor. But Vidura was kinder because he came to smash this idea in his mind. So the conclusion to this verse, we can summarize as follows. No one is king in this world. Prabhupada made it very clear. Everything belongs to Krishna. Prabhupada tells us that we are servants of eternal time. And when we are servants of eternal time, how can we be the master of anything? It's not possible. How can we be the master of anything? So this is very important. The other thing that we should remember is how Vidura came into the palace and said, get out of here immediately. Do not delay. So the urgency of our situation must really bear down upon us, Prabhus and Matajis. We should remember now that this life must be chopped with the word immediate. You know, in letters, we have two chops, urgent or immediate. This one is not urgent. This one is immediate. Because if we don't know when Yamaraj is coming, he's now no longer Vidura, so he's gone back to Yamaraj's duties. He's very, very particular about who we are. Are we using our time well for Krishna? If so, we have renounced materialistic tendencies. Are we using time less for Krishna? If so, we have become attached to materialistic duties. So that is why Bhagavatam tells us, Tasmat ekena manasa, Bhagavan sadvatam patihi, Shrotavya krititavyascha, Dhyaya pujas cha nityada. I think the verse is from 1 to 14. Bhagavatam insists that this is the formula for renunciation. How? With one pointed attention, ekena manasa, we should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead. So artificially, we cannot come out of renunciation and keep quiet because there will be a vacuum. And when there's a vacuum, something else will become attached to. There are many sadhu babas who sit in Dwarka. They have left so many things from where they come. In 2-3 weeks, because there is no engagement for Krishna, they have built a small hut, they have bought a transistor, and they hear BBC. And if you ask them, you left everything to come here, then they say, well, I've left everything, but I still need to know what is happening in the world. So this is artificial renunciation. Instead, Bhagavatam's renunciation is dynamic. Don't lament. What did Vidura do? Drop the bow, go for yatra. Increase devotional service and be active in Krishna consciousness. Glorify Krishna. Remember Krishna. Worship him. Krishna is Satvatam Patihi. He is the protector of devotees. In other words, he will protect our consciousness. But if we don't do this, Prabhus and Matajis, then 7:6:14 of Srimad Bhagavatam will catch us. And this is a very important verse. It's a nice advice, given by Dhruva Maharaj in the 7th canto. Kutumba poshaya viyan nijayur na buddhyatirtam vihatam pramattaha sarvatra tapa trayadukhitatma nirvidyatena swakutumbaramaha. The translation is very nice. One who is too attached cannot understand that he is wasting valuable time and valuable life for the maintenance of his family. He also fails to understand that the purpose of human life, a life that is suitable for realization of the absolute truth, is being imperceptibly spoiled. Instead, such a person is cleverly attentive to seeing that not a single farthing, not a single cent is lost by mismanagement. So although an attached person in material existence suffers, like Dhrtarastra suffered, he still does not develop a distaste for the way of material existence. And that is very sad. So Vidura came to make sure that Dhrtarastra would renounce on the basis of enlightenment and transcendental knowledge. And at the end of his discussions, Dhrtarashtra became determined. Why? Because of the sadhu sangha of a genuine renunciant in the form of Vidura. We have a choice, Prabhus and Matajis. We can either be Dhritarashtras, or we can decide actually to become Dhritahari. Dhrita means to hold very tightly. And in Bhagavatam, I think it is Brahma, Brahma says very nicely in the 2nd canto, 6th chapter, around 33rd or 34th verse. Narada asked Brahma, my dear father, you must be very old, Dhritarashtra is also old, So Brahmaji, how much older he should be? And Narada was observing how Brahmaji was so sharp in his creations. So Narada then asked him, how is it that despite being old, you haven't lost your faculties? Because normally when we go old, we start losing some faculties, right? We lose our hair. I have so much more now, but now it's gone. We lose our teeth after a while. We need dentures. Skins are going, We find the best light for our video conferences so we don't look so bad. But actually, we're all deteriorating. So the question he asks is very relevant because Dhritarashtra had deteriorated. In the next two verses, you'll find, Vidura tells Dhritarashtra, your condition is really bad. Why? He says, you are blind already from birth. Your teeth are loose. Your memory is shortened. Your intelligence is disturbed. You are coughing out mucus. And Vidura says something amazing. Your liver is defective. I don't know how he knew that, but really, Krishna must have really given him the inspiration to see him like a doctor. He said, your liver is defective. He must have seen his face, and he knew his liver was going. Can you imagine? To that extent, he could see the deterioration. So Brahmaji says something very nice that we should take back and we should end after this. He gives the way to come out of this deterioration. He gives the way to come out of this death. He says, Na bharati me angam risho upalakshate navai kvachin me manaso mrisha gatihi na me rishikani patanti asatpate yanme hridau kantavyatha drito harihi. Drito harihi. It's a good way to end the verse. We started with Dhritarashtra and we should end with Drita harihi. So what does he say? He says, Narada, I have done three things. No, actually, but I've achieved three things. I have only caught hold very tightly to the lotus feet of Hari. And because I've held his feet with great zeal, the word that Prabhupada uses is zeal. Zeal means enthusiasm, eagerness, determination, faith. All of this makes zeal. And he says, because I've done that, three things have happened. Whatever I say have never proven to be false. Whatever Brahmaji says comes to pass. Whatever your spiritual masters and pure devotees say will always come to pass. Second thing he says, the progress of my mind has never deterred. No Alzheimer's, no dementia, no deterioration of mental capacity. Imagine, Brahma says, my mind is very strong. And last point, my senses have never degraded into temporary matter. Why? Because I have been very tightly holding on to the lotus feet of Hari. So we should pray to Krishna and our spiritual masters and Srila Prabhupada that if we should renounce the Dhritarashtra mentality, or we should embrace the Dhrita Hari mentality. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Gurudev ki, Ananta Kodi Vaishnavinda ki, Nitai Gaur. Thank you, Anand Prabhu, and thank you to all of you. Nice to see all of you.
So, Hare Krishna, everyone. If you would like to ask any question or comment, please ask Prabhuji.
I think there was a question in the chat, Prabhu. One question was there.
Oh, sorry. I should see it. Sorry, Prabhu. 1 minute. Shamanand Prabhu is asking, Dhritarashtra, the association of two of the greatest Mahajans within his own kingdom, Bhishma Dev and Vidura. Dhritarashtra also had darshan of Krishna even though he was blind initially. In that case, even though he had such great association, why didn't his heart change? Instead, continued to be blind spiritually. Please kindly explain this situation. It's a very nice point. He had so much association actually. Bhishma Dev was there, Vidura was there, Krishna was visiting like, someone just popping in and popping out. But so did Duryodhan, so did Dushashan. In fact, Bhishma Dev, in Mahabharata, he was playing so affectionately with the Pandavas and the Kauravas. They crawled on his lap, they played with his beard. Duryodhan and Dushashan, they were also young boys once upon a time. And they played with him. And he gave them so much of good association. Vidura was the uncle. He also gave so much sensibility to them. But when the goal of life is not the goal of life that should be given, when our goal of life is to enjoy our sense, then the mind is so powerful because it is the greatest enemy that we make a concerted effort very often not even to accept good counsel. We resist sadhu sangha because we are consumed by sense gratification. But at the same time, let us not forget, Dhritarashtra ended his life by finally embracing the sadhu sangha of Vidura. But that sadhu sangha was a seed that was put into his heart by his association throughout Mahabharata with Bhishma Dev, with the Pandavas, with Vidura. We just didn't see it fructify at that point of time. It fructified, thankfully for him, just before he left this world. This is an important concept in Krishna consciousness. Sometimes we preach to someone and we feel, why are they still so materialistic? We should have faith that just by preaching and speaking about Krishna, the seed of devotional service is already sowed. For a while, because of previous karmic reactions, because of strong compelling of desire for lust in this world, it takes time for all the anarthas to leave us. But at the end of the day, devotional service never goes in vain. And that's why Dhritarashtra, at the end of the day, at least, even if he did not become Narottama, at least Bhagavatam tells us he became Dhiraha. He did not become Narottama, but he became Dhiraha. Then, of course, Bhagavad Gita tells us, Krishna says, there are those with demoniac natures who do not want to hear Krishna because they make an independent choice. And we all have that independent choice, Prabhus and Matajis. Krishna cannot put a gun to our head and say, you have to love me now. He gives you that space because when you make a choice to go towards him, it builds your devotional character. Duryodhana was stubborn till the end. Kamsa was stubborn till the end. Hiranyakashipu was stubborn till the end. But even if they were stubborn, at the end when they died, even though the Lord shortened the duration of their lives, for example, of the Kauravas on the battlefield, even then, they also attained salvation. So actually, even if one is demonic in mentality, but he faces off with Krishna, still he gets some benefit. But if that can happen to someone who's demonic, how much more should a devotee actually gain? So the answer actually is, Dhritarashtra already had the seed within him. Even though he was so filled with bad association, that seed fructified in the form of Vidura coming to give him the final instructions and to somehow push his brother out from materialistic thoughts and leave for north immediately, and then end his life at least trying to understand that the purpose of life is not to come back to this world, but the purpose of life is to come out of birth and death. So I hope that's helpful for the first question. I'm looking at another question here. When someone tells us something unpleasant, we feel bad because it pinches our ego. How do we understand it? Is there never a time when we are not really at fault, even though the other person is saying so? Well, it depends on the situation. Sometimes you may feel that, well, 50% my fault, 50% your fault. But in all transactions, it takes two hands to clap. Instead of concentrating on the other person's fault, which you have no control over, it's common sense to concentrate on the part you have played for this situation to happen. You can only rectify what is within your ambit. You cannot rectify somebody else's ambit. So instead of trying to think along those lines, it is actually better not to think, is there a time when I'm not at fault or at fault, but to inspect every situation the way Parikshit Maharaj inspected, for example. He examined every time his own actions. Yudhishthira Maharaj never examined the actions of Dhritarashtra because he did not feel inimical towards him. In fact, at the end of 13th chapter, he feels bad Dhritarashtra left because he felt, I've not taken care of them. But the truth is, he had done all he could, but he was protected in his humility. So we should look to ourselves and we should look at it positively. So that's an important point. Last point, maybe, I'm not comparing, but in practical world, I'm not Vidura and my family members, relatives and friends are not Dhritarashtra. How to preach and behave even if they don't listen? Well, Prabhu, even if you say you're not Vidura, you're a devotee. Thankfully, you don't have Dhritarashtra, so that's very good. But the important point is, whatever that we can preach, we should try to practice. if we behave in a certain way, then it doesn't matter whether they listen to us or not. The potency comes from Krishna. It doesn't come from us. If we remember that we are instruments, then we should keep preaching. Because preaching is not only for others. Preaching is finally introspective for ourselves. So if we preach to ourselves and we change our behaviors, others by seeing our behaviors will eventually follow. But it'll take time. And if they decide not to follow, then what can you do? You can only continue with what you can. Vidura, at that point of time when he left the palace, he tried so hard to change them, but they didn't change. So what did he do? He decided, since I have to leave, better I concentrate on my sadhana. So he went for the tirthas and the yatras. And again, Krishna gave him the chance to come back to his family member. And at that time when he spoke on the basis of purity and experience. And it touched the heart of Dhrtarastra. So there is a time for everything, because we are all on the platform of time. But we should not feel discouraged if family members may not hear us. Very often family members don't hear us because they've seen us before we came to devotional service. So it's difficult for them naturally to see us as saintly personalities. Instead, they should just see that, hey, he's trying to do something, she's trying to do something. And we should be very respectful to our family members. We should not overnight condemn them, criticize them, tell them you're all going to Narak Loka and this and that. No, we should be patient. But we should work on our courtyard. There's a nice saying, if your garden is in order, then your neighbor sees your garden in order. He may ignore it for 10 days. But on the 11th day, he will come and say, what did you do to put your garden in order? That is the value of practice. And that is the value of preaching. So we must renounce expectations. The expectation that because we have taken up Krishna consciousness, we can touch others. It doesn't matter. The preaching is in the practice. If they see you sitting down quietly, peacefully, behaving yourselves very nicely, they will become impressed because Krishna is in their hearts and Krishna is in your heart and Krishna is the ultimate adjuster. He will finally adjust everything very nicely. I hope that's all right. One last question. If office activities are increasing and time for Bhagavatam reducing, does it mean that devotional service is not sincere and hence Krishna is reducing Bhagavatam time? Don't worry, Prabhu, that's not the case. Krishna doesn't punish us because office activities have increased. When Arjuna was fighting the war, he did not have time to sit down and chant. He didn't have time to do his Bhagavatam. He was fighting, but it didn't mean that he lost his consciousness. What we should do is to be determined that if our office time is increasing, we must be adaptable. Perhaps we may not be able to spend time the way we did last time with Bhagavatam, but how about increasing quality? How about studying seriously and keeping that thought of what we have studied through the day, finding and squeezing and taking time out? Guru Maharaj always used the word squeeze time. That is nature of time. If you don't squeeze it out, it will squeeze you. So we take pockets of time here and there and use that time. And wherever there is some time, quickly go back to Bhagavatam. But the problem we have is we don't see our work as Krishna consciousness. That's why we feel that our work is separate and Bhagavatam is separate. But Arjuna didn't see it that way. Arjuna realized that Krishna wants me to do this, I will do it to satisfy him. So we should take a simple position without complicating things. Whatever work you are in, you just take it now that Krishna wants you to do it. Start the day remembering Krishna, offer your work and the results to Krishna. Try your best in it. Vaishnavas are not shirkers, we are workers. But offer everything you have. And see, with that attitude, Krishna himself will expand time such that you can read Bhagavatam and you can always with determination continue your devotional service. Very important. Is there one more here? Anand Prabhu, should I stop now?
No, if you have time, you can answer, Prabhuji.
I'll take one more, maybe one more, because I have another class afterwards, so that's why I need to.
Yes.
Let me see what is here. Let me see. I just wanted to know how Maitreya Muni knew Vidura's previous life, but Vidura didn't know. It's a nice point, but the answer is straightforward. Who needs to know what is ultimately revealed by Krishna? And Krishna reveals such knowledge to the devotees at the right time. So that's the answer to that. And maybe one more. I can take one more here. Dhrtarastra was a fool. Only a fool listens to the words of a fool. What are the signs of the fool? What does the fool do? A fool is stupid, Maya-stricken. He dies of false ego. His spiritual life is dead. In intoxication of Maya and egotism, whatever he does, his actions always bring him pain. He lives in pain. I think the best way to answer this is perhaps to answer it in the positive. We know Dhritarashtra was foolish, but we know that Vidura was very intelligent. Why? In order to avoid being a fool, we should understand how Vidura advised Dhritarashtra. So instead of studying the nature of a fool, it is more constructive to study the nature of a devotee. By studying the nature of a devotee, one can automatically avoid being a fool. That's a simple answer to that. Thank you, Anand Prabhu. Thank you, Vaman Kshetra.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. There are some couple of announcement. So thank you, Devakinandan Das Prabhuji, for such a wonderful class. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We are very fortunate that tomorrow, again, His Grace Devakinandan Das Prabhuji will be giving class on pastimes of Lord Jagannath as a celebration of Jagannath Snan Yatra. So you can join us tomorrow at 6 p.m. Sydney time on Zoom or Facebook. And next week, Friday, His Grace Gopal Krishna Das Prabhuji from New Zealand will be giving class on decoding desires. So the class will be the same time as today, 7 p.m. Sydney time. And you can listen today's class recording on Hare Krishna Vaman Kshetra Facebook and website, as well as on Devakinandan Das Prabhuji's YouTube channel. So thank you very much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
His Grace Devakinandan Das Prabhuji ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev ki.
jai.
Jai.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Hare Krishna everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Hare Krishna everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Hare Krishna everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare